The wind of Dry Hollow did not whistle. It murmured, low and tired, like an old woman singing to herself, a sound that carried stories too heavy for memory and too soft for judgment. It stirred the dust like it was sifting through ghosts. And on this August afternoon, beneath a sky scabbed with silver clouds, a feather tumbled past Boone Callahan's boots and caught on the edge of his spur. He bent slowly, picked it up, and turned it between his fingers. Raven feather. Black as burnt molasses and light as silence. He tucked it into the band of his hat and looked up. The auction yard ahead groaned with cattle and sweat. Voices cracked like whips. A man swore over a mule with a twisted leg. Another spat tobacco into the dirt, missing his boots by a miracle. Boone leaned against the fence rail, as he often did on market days, not to buy but to remember how human greed sounded out loud. It grounded him, like a bruise you press just to make sure it's still healing. Then he saw her. Dragged more than led by a broad-shouldered man with a beard like barbed wire, she stumbled over the wooden planks of the platform, barefoot, sack over her head, wrists tied. Her dress was the color of dried clay, torn at the hem, blood at the sleeve. The crowd only half looked. She was not for auction, not really, not in the way laws recognized. But her presence in the square was a transaction. Her pain a commodity. Her silence currency. Jed McGraw's voice cut through the murmurs like a meat saw. "Don't bother starin'. She's mine. Paid fair and square in whiskey and horses. Widow or not, she's a wild one, needs breakin'." Boone's jaw flexed. His boots didn't move. But something inside him, old and half-starved, sat up. The woman's hands were trembling. Jed shoved her forward, jerking the sack from her head. The cloth fell like a curtain, and the world paused. She wasn't a stranger. She was the girl by the river. 5 years ago, on the edge of the Lakota lands, barefoot in summer grass, a braid over her shoulder, a raven feather tucked behind one ear. She'd laughed with her younger brother as they chased fish through shallow streams, their joy spilling into the air like music. Boone had seen her for less than an hour, guarding horses while he passed through with a trader. But he remembered the way she'd looked up at him, eyes like dusk, unreadable and endless, and how he'd felt seen, down to the marrow. He had never forgotten her, had never spoken of her. And now here she stood, bruised, silent, and bound. Miss Rose Delaney, standing just beside him, laid a gentle hand on his forearm. "Not your fight, Boone," she murmured. "That man's got papers. Claims her through marriage. And she's young." Boone didn't speak. He was already walking. The crowd parted as he stepped onto the platform. Dust swirled around his long shadow, his hat low, boots echoing with purpose. Jed turned with a sneer, reeking of rotgut and arrogance. "Well, look what the wind blew in. The mountains come down to sniff trouble." Boone stopped just short of them. He looked at the girl. Her name came back to him like a forgotten song. "Kiona," he said, soft as rain. Her head lifted. A flicker passed through her eyes, not recognition, not yet. But something softened. Jed laughed. "That her name? Hell, I call her what I please. Ain't that right, sweetheart?" Boone spoke, voice low and deliberate. "I'll buy her freedom." A ripple passed through the onlookers. Jed barked a laugh. "She ain't for sale. Not to you. Not to anyone. I got law and rope on my side." Boone untied his saddlebag, dropped it at Jed's feet. "Every coin I got. Horseshoeing, fence-building, breaking colts for fools like you. More than she's worth to a man like you. Less than she's worth to the world." Jed looked at the bag, then at Boone. "You sweet on her or somethin'? That it?" Boone didn't answer. But his hands didn't shake. Reverend Shaw stepped forward, hesitant. "Now, Boone, you understand what you're stirring here. You're taking on something heavy." "I ain't taking," Boone said. "I'm setting something down." Kiona's lips parted, just a fraction. Her shoulders rose like a breath she hadn't dared to take. Jed's eyes narrowed. He spat. "Fine. Take her. She ain't much use now anyhow. Don't come crying when she cuts your throat in the night." Boone looked him dead in the eye. You'd know about knives in the dark. The girl didn't cry as Boone cut the ropes from her wrists. She didn't thank him. She didn't speak at all. But she followed when he turned, walking barefoot over stones and splinters as though they were clouds. They rode out under a sky bruised with stormlight. Boone led the horse at a walk, letting her sit behind the saddle, holding nothing, saying less. At the ridge overlooking the canyon, he stopped and let the silence bloom. Kiona slid down, hands brushing her raw wrist. She looked at him sideways, wary. "Why?" she asked, voice dry as cracked earth. Boone didn't look at her. "5 years ago I saw you by the river. You laughed. I never heard anything like it again." She blinked. "You remembered me?" "Every storm." Kiona sat on a rock, knees tucked close. "My family's gone. Brother died when soldiers came. Land taken, name stolen. I married to live. He wanted obedience. I gave silence." Boone didn't move closer. But he took off his coat and placed it near her, not offering it, just setting it down. She didn't touch it. But she didn't move away. At dawn, they reached the cabin, Boone's home, a rough-hewn shelter on the edge of nowhere. Wind sang through the eaves. The front door groaned open like it was waking from sleep. He gave her the smaller room. Didn't speak when she closed the door behind her. The days passed in quiet. She carved things from wood, birds mostly. He chopped firewood, baked bread, clean tack. He left a shawl by her door when the nights got colder. She mended his torn shirt one morning and left it folded on the porch rail. They spoke little, but their silences began to harmonize. One evening, she stood beside him as he poured oats for the horses. "You have no idea who I am," she said. "I could be dangerous." "You already were," he replied, not unkindly. "To me." Back then. A silence followed, not heavy, not empty, full of something unnamed. She turned. "You carved my name into the cabin post." He nodded. "I used to think names had power," she said. "Now I think remembering does." A raven cried above them, circling low. 3 days later, the storm arrived, not from the sky but from town. Jed rode up with 2 men, both armed, all of them grim. Boone saw them before they were near and closed the barn door gently. Kiona met him halfway. Her hands were steady. "They're here for me." "I'll take you north," he said. "Or east. There's a canyon few know how to cross." "I'm done running." He studied her. "You sure?" "No," she said. "But I'm ready." They stood together on the porch when Jed dismounted. "I came for what's mine," Jed called, voice oily. Boone didn't respond. Kiona stepped forward. She held his old rifle, the one he'd shown her how to use only once, under moonlight. "She ain't gonna shoot," Jed laughed. "Girl like that." Kiona leveled the rifle. One more step. The men at Jed's side hesitated. Jed raised his hands, eyes narrowing. "So this is how it ends?" "No," Boone said. "This is how it begins." Rain began to fall, soft at first, then all at once. Jed stepped back, water dripping from his beard, his hatred unable to find a foothold. "You'll regret this," he hissed. "I already lived the part 1 regret," Kiona said. He rode off, slower than he came. Inside the cabin, later, she laid the rifle down and exhaled. Boone poured tea, his hands more calloused than ever, and somehow softer. She touched the edge of his fingers. He didn't flinch. Weeks passed. The land softened. Wildflowers bloomed like secrets in the dirt. Boone and Kiona moved around each other like tides, never crashing, always touching. She laughed once, a small, surprised sound. He smiled for an entire afternoon without realizing. One night, he carved a small raven into the lintel above the door. She saw it, said nothing. But her eyes welled up. "Would it be all right," he asked quietly one evening, "if we walked together until the end? No ceremony. Just choosing." Kiona didn't speak. She stepped into him, forehead against his chest, and he wrapped his arms around her like a promise. Later, Miss Rose came by with a quilt stitched in sunbursts and rain patterns. "Every thread a piece of someone who made it through," she said. The cabin warmed. Smoke curled from the chimney. The raven feather still sat in Boone's hat, above the door. And sometimes, in the stillness between night and dawn, Kiona would whisper her brother's name to the fire. And Boone would listen, like the earth itself was learning how to grieve and go on. Out here, where silence knows your full name and stars blink like knowing eyes, love doesn't shout. It stays.